Hello, in this video, we will look at the basics of 3D modeling in Blender 2.8. So without further ado, let's begin. Three major operations that you can carry out on an object in Blender is moving, rotating, and scaling. And the way that we used to do it in Blender is by using shortcut keys. So hitting the G key would be the way to move the object, R to rotate, and S to scale. We could also lock the axis in which we could do it. So if I press G and X, we can move the object only in the X-axis. Similar with G, Y, G, Z, and also with the other operations such as rotate on the X-axis, rotate on the Y-axis, scale on the Z-axis, and so on. Another way you could do it is by going to the object properties and moving the location manually that way as well. So we can move the Y-axis, we can move on the X-axis, the Y-axis, we can change the rotation of it, and so on. To bring everything back, we'd press Alt-R, Alt-G, Alt-S to clear the rotation, clear the location, and clear the scale. Now, in the new Blender 2.8, we have these new options over here. So all that stuff that I said right now about shortcut keys, you don't even really need to know them. You can just go ahead now and, for example, move, just click that, and you can move your object just by left click and dragging. Easy as that. If you want to control which axis to move on, just click on those arrows that you see there. So this will move on the Z-axis, this will move on the X-axis, this will move on the Y-axis, and if you click on one of these squares, it will lock the axis on, well, for example, if I want to only move it on the Z and X-axis but not the Y-axis, I click this green box over here, so it won't move at all on the Y-axis. If I click on the red one, it'll move on all the axes except the X-axis, like so. Same with the blue one. It will not move on the Z-axis, but just on the X and Y. So we can now use the controls, and it's actually pretty quick as well. You can also use this widget here to control where you want it to move, and so on. So right now we're in move mode. We can also change to rotate mode and do the exact same thing. So I can rotate it that way, I can freely rotate it, I can rotate it on the X-axis, and so on. I can also do the same with scale. So I can scale it up overall just by left click and dragging anywhere on the screen, or I can control which axis I want to. So if I just clear out the rotation scale, I can scale on the X-axis, the Z-axis, the Y-axis, or one of these little boxes here. Okay, does the exact same thing. So it's a lot more easier and a lot more user-friendly, especially if you're a beginner. There's also these new options here to annotate. So right now it's in eraser mode. Actually, it was like that before, but if I go into annotate mode, you can pretty much draw stuff on it. So if you have a pen, you can make notes, like, you know, I don't have a pen right now, I'm just using my mouse, but basically you can make notes any way you want. So very, very good for planning and things like that. So let me just erase all of that. Okay, next up we have the measure tool. So this is great if you want to measure how large your objects are. So for example, I know that this is exactly, is exactly 2 meters long, or 2.00313 meters long. So this ruler function is actually great if you want to do projects that require measurements. So for example, if you're working on an architectural kind of a project and you want to design, say, a house or some building, and you have some architecture diagrams with you that has the exact measurements, then this will be very, very handy because you can then recreate that architecture in 3D. Okay, cool. So I also missed out this button over here. What this does is it will transform, it will have all these three transforms here. So you can move the object, you can scale on the Z-axis if you want, but if, you can rotate however you like. But do note that when you click outside and when you left click and drag outside, that it will just move. It won't do scaling or anything like that. So it's just sort of all three options at once. Now you might be wondering, well, we can't really do much with this. How on earth will we, you know, actually build upon this form? How do we convert this cube into something like say a chair or a table or even a house or even a fully fledged character? Well, obviously you can't really do that in object mode because we can't really work with the vertices, the edges, the faces of this object. So in order to work with this data, we need to change from object mode to edit mode. So now we can see that we can play around with the vertices, the edges, and even the face. And also notice that once we go into edit mode, we now have these extra buttons over here. Blender 2.8 is now far more user-friendly and in terms of the modeling tools that we can use over here. Before, it may have taken some guesswork to find out how to carry out these tools. Now it's presented to you visually in a very easy to use way. So assuming you know 3D modeling, the 3D modeling techniques, you may understand what these tools means. I'm not really going to go through each of them because 3D modeling is a separate topic on its own. I'm just covering the main features of Blender 2.8's 3D modeling tools. So I'm just going to assume you know what extrude means, what inset means, what loop cut means. But generally what I do is, when I do 3D modeling, most of the time I use the extrude and the loop cut tools. That's pretty much 90% of my modeling. I rarely use these other tools, but the inset tool, the bevel tool can be quite helpful, even the knife tool. But yeah, that's just my little secret there. The loop cut and the extrude tool is what I use 90% of the time. Before I get into that, let's just first look at the different modes. Also, I'm just going to assume you know what a vertex, an edge, and a face means. Vertex is literally like the point, the ends or the points of your 3D object. The edge is just the border or the edge of your 3D object, pretty self-explanatory. And the face is one whole area, which is generally enclosed by edges. Blender 2.8, you can switch between these modes. I can go from vertex mode, so I can select vertices like this. I can go for edge mode, so I can select edges now. And I can go to face mode, so I can select these faces over here. Now, the cool thing about Blender 2.8 is you can now select multiple modes. So I can go ahead and press Shift Select, and now I can select both faces and edges as well. And I can also even maybe select 3 modes at once. So vertices, faces, and edges. So now, for example, if I select this face, and this face, the entire object gets selected. Why? It's because by just selecting those 3 faces, we've inadvertently selected all the vertices in our model. Every single vertex is covered. So for example, if I go to only face select mode and select this face, this face, this face, you'll notice nothing else gets selected. Even though technically all the vertices are still kind of selected, but that's not really the mode we're in. We're only in face select mode. Okay, so that's pretty self-explanatory. It's very, very cool to have the ability in Blender 2.8 to be able to select multiple modes. Okay, so once you're in the mode, you can now carry out some of the operations that you see over here. So for example, if I select that face over there, I can, for example, go into extrude mode. So I can now pull out or extrude a new set of faces for my 3D object. So very, very cool. I can then do the same operations like I did before. For example, I can scale it down. I can maybe scale on the x-axis or scale it on the y-axis. I can maybe move it down a little bit, and there I've just very, very quickly created a very simple house. If I want, I can continue to extrude again. Then maybe, maybe just move it back down. So that's pretty much the extrusion tool. If you want to know the shortcut key to the extrusion tool, if you don't want to use this button, you can obviously use the shortcut key E. That's the way we rolled in Blender 2.7. So we just press E, and then we can use the other shortcut keys that we want. So we can press E again, and then I can press S to scale, or grab to move, or R to rotate. You know, things like that. Oops. I can go S Shift Z to control it so that it won't scale on the Z axis and things like that. And then I can keep extruding and doing very, very cool things like that. Another tool that I use quite often is the loop cut tool. So if I go to loop cut, I can add a loop cut over here. So that just creates a new set of vertices over here. That now creates a new loop over here. And of course I can specify the number of cuts that I want. So I can very easily create 3 cuts there, or even add more. So then if I go back to extrude mode, I can say, for example, I want to select, say I want to select this face select mode again, and then select, say, that one, go back to extrude mode, extrude it out, and then I can continue to do modeling that way. So the loop cut actually makes it very, very easy for us to define new forms. It adds loops in an existing model so that we can add extra detail to our 3D models. Okay, so you can also use these other tools, which I won't go into detail. For example, you can use a smooth tool. You wouldn't use it in an architectural building, kind of in a thing, but just smooths out your object. You'd probably mostly use it in a organic type of model rather than an architectural kind of model. Another popular tool that's quite useful in 3D modeling is the inset tool, inset faces. So if I go to inset mode, then just left click and drag inwards, I can inset the face. So now I can move it outwards if I like, to create to just create an inset of a face. Pretty self-explanatory really. If I think this model looks too sharp, generally everything in the real world is not really sharp like it is in the 3D world. So generally what artists do is they smooth things out. So generally you would go to the bevel tool and you might say, let's just go to edge select mode now and select, I don't know, say these verts over here. And then I might move the view. Now in bevel select, I'll just go ahead and left click, drag, and just add something like that, just to smooth the edge. Obviously we don't have enough data there, so we obviously need to add more segments. So I might add 3 or 4. 3 or 4 will be good. And oops, something like that. So now when I go out, so now when I tab out of edit mode, or just change from edit mode to object mode, you'll see that we've just smoothed out the edge of our model. So that's pretty much it. That is the basics of 3D modeling in Blender 2.8. Also, if you've come from Blender 2.7 and you already know some of the modeling stuff, I just want to let you know that there's another cool new feature in Blender 2.8. For instance, if I go ahead and create a new object over here, say a monkey, I just want to let you know that before, you can only tab into edit mode one object at a time, as you may know. In the new Blender 2.8, you can now go into edit mode multiple objects at a time. So I can shift select this object and then go tab into edit mode, and you'll notice that both objects are now in edit mode. You can pretty much do multiple tasks at once. So for example, I can select that face, and maybe I might choose to extrude both of them at once. Very, very cool. If you've done character modeling before, this may be beneficial to you, especially if you like to separate out your eye mesh from your character mesh. So now you can adjust the eye and the character much easier by just going to edit mode at the same time with both meshes selected. So pretty cool stuff. So I hope this tutorial has been useful. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I hope to see you in the next video.